Welcome back to Light Talk, where everyday people can share their spiritual journey stories with a safe and supportive community. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email lighttalk423@gmail.com. Or in the comments below, type in guest please. While you're at it, please click on your like, share, and subscribe buttons. All right, let's welcome our guest for today. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing good.
Yeah,
doing
thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun with our little screen going in and out. We'll try not to let it do that.
It's kind of fun, I think, for October. This is the month of spirits and things like that. So look at me, watch me disappear. Woo, back and forth. And sometimes it happens, I'm not even doing anything. So look at that.
See. All right,
see,
there you go. You're not even moving.
Yeah. I assure you I am here, though.
All right. Well, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Diana, and to say a little bit about me, I've been in Colorado for quite a while, and I've always had different careers, and right now I'm an IT specialist and musician, and I'm also studying to become a therapist. Yes.
Yay. That's awesome. We always need good people like you out there like that.
Yeah, that's the hope, is to help as many people as I can, and I'll know how to do therapy for somebody in IT. So I can offer that support.
Yeah, IT support to that. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, well, what kind of stories do you have for us today?
Oh gosh, see, I've got a couple stories, but I have one story that really speaks to me that I'd like to share about my decision to go back and get my master's in music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I guess I'll just jump right in.
Just jump right in.
Okay. Yeah, so this was probably back, oh my goodness, how many years ago? I think maybe about 12 years ago. And I was working in IT, and I hated my job. They kept adding zeros on my paycheck. Very hard to walk away from that. I don't care what anybody says. It's like you can tolerate a bad job if you're getting a lot of money.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
The thing is, it will, your spirit starts to decline once that happens. And I was on the fence. I was like, okay, I'm going to take a trip to California. I'm going out to Hollywood to, visit a cousin that works in the industry out there. And I said a little prayer, and I was on the fence about, do I just quit this high-paying job and go back and get my master's in music? Am I meant to do that? Or is this just something because I'm miserable in the job? What do I do? And so I said a prayer, and I remember where I was. I was in the living room of my house, and I was just practicing. And I said this prayer, and I said, God, dear God, if I am meant to go back to school and study music, if this is a part of my career, would you please give me a sign? And please let it be a sign that I will recognize, because I tend to miss things, or I overlook things, or, that can't be a real sign. I know that was like an explosion in the sky that doesn't happen every 100,000 years, but it can't be for me, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I think we're all kind of like that.
Mm-hmm. So I said the prayer, and then 3 days later, I was in California, and my cousin picked me up, and she says, we're gonna go to the house. I have a new dog. We're gonna walk down this, what she described as a very dangerous road, down to this little stand to get some burritos for lunch. She says, we'll talk and we'll visit and stuff. And I thought, oh, that'll be nice, because she was on break from filming before she started her next TV show. And she says, yeah, I don't really get a chance to do this. It'll be nice to visit. And we'll have the new dog. I can enjoy the dog and everything else. So we were walking, and it was kind of cold. And she had just dropped me off at the house. I mean, literally, we're talking like pick me up from the airport. We just got in the house, and then we just walked out. And so walking down the street, and you get to the place where the burritos place is supposed to be, and it's like gone. And she's like, oh no! And I had all these plans, and I said, it's okay. I said, let's walk back up to the house, and let's figure out something else. We'll go out. It's okay. I said, no big deal. Honestly, you don't feel like you have to entertain me. So as we're walking up, we're just kind of in some deep talk, and it's getting cold and believe it or not, in Los Angeles, it can get really chilly. At times people think it's always sunny. It's not always the case. Mm-hmm. So I had my hands in my pockets of this hoodie that I'd borrowed, and I was like, man, it's getting chilly. we're walking up, and my cousin was in kind of she wasn't in the best mood at the moment. I think she was really disappointed because she wanted those burritos and stuff. And so I'm like, got my hands in my pocket, and I'm like, okay, trying to get happy kind of thing. And I hear this, in those old-fashioned bicycles, you hear that bell, the bell that you pull down. Ching, ching, yeah, kind of thing. So I hear that. It's pulling up alongside us. And this busy road with all this traffic all of a sudden didn't have any cars on it, which I thought was interesting. I didn't realize that till after. But this guy comes up, hello, hello, with his English accent, and cha-ching, cha-ching, and I turn around and I'm like, oh, my cousin's like, yeah. It was like, why are you stopping us? And he looks at me and he says, he gets off his bike, he's this tall, skinny guy. And he goes, yes, you, hello, excuse me, yes, you. And I'm like, me? Looking around like, he's talking to somebody behind me? No, he's talking to me. And he says, I have a message for you. And he says, it's something you asked for. And I have a message from above. And are you willing to listen? And my cousin's like, she's ready to yell at him. She's like, freak, get away. And I said, no, it's okay. I said, yeah, I'm hearing this. I said, I think I know what you're talking about. And he goes, you're a guitar player. And he says, you have very long fingers. And I had my hands in my hoodie. And I'd had them there for a little while. So I was like, okay, it's not like, I think if this guy was following us. I mean, I'm not so sure you could see that from that distance. So I'm like, yeah, I take out my hands. And he goes, you're a guitar player. And he says, and you're meant for the stage. And you need to pursue your goals. You had a question. And the answer is yes, you are a guitar player and you're meant for the stage. That's how he said it in this accent kind of thing. And he goes, and I've been asked, he goes, I have a guide. I have a spirit guide, an angel guide. And he says that I talked to the angels in the heavens and they have told me to tell you this. And to make sure you got the message. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I just remember looking down going, yeah, I do. He says, okay, so you've got it and I can leave now. And I said, yeah, I said, I do. I said, thank you very much. And he rode off. And as he's riding off, my cousin's like, what the? I'm like, I'll tell you what, let me explain. Because at this point I'm thinking, I don't want to offend anybody. Who knows who else is going to pop out of thin air? Right. I don't want to offend any angels. I don't know if that's possible, but I was like, let's get to the house and we'll discuss this. And we walked up and I kind of explained it. And meanwhile, my cousin's looking at me like, okay, yeah, let's go eat. And I tried to tell her, like, you gotta understand. I remember praying and saying, please give me a sign that I will get and that I will not overlook. And I remember him saying, you got that. Can I go now? You got your sign. and I just remember him riding off and then just being gone. Yeah. And when I think back to that, I mean, that was a huge thing for me. And everything, I put two and two together and I went, yeah, that was my, so I think sometimes you can pray for signs and you get angels. You get something from the spirit. And he was talking about, I just remember in parts of the conversation, he was talking about how he communicates with the angels and those in the afterlife. And I had already been a big believer that that's possible. And I'd had other types of encounters, but that was a very special one for me. And I want to encourage anybody, like, I mean, here he wasn't claiming to be some supernatural being. He was just claiming to communicate with the supernatural beings. And I think sometimes, we are used in that capacity for someone else. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. It is pretty cool how that works. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a sign or something that I've had, except for my Jesus Take the Wheel one. Yeah. That's my biggest sign, is just not listening to him. I actually was arguing with him. I know I tell the story all the time, but it's amazing that you're sitting there and you're arguing with the spirits and you're saying, no, and they're like, nope, time to take over. So what happened with my experience is they took over my steering wheel and forced me to go get gas. And I was like, no, I don't need to get gas. I don't need it. I can wait until after work. And they wouldn't let me, to find out that there was an accident that I would have been involved in if I had have gone straight there. Yeah. I believe that. I mean, I think they take all forms. And who's to say, that's how they work with everybody. I mean, I'm thinking about this guy, and maybe he came to me in form, and who else? I mean, who knows? How else he works with other people. I mean, I had no idea whether he does readings. I have no idea whether he. Maybe I was the only one. I mean, who knows? There's some people where they just have very, very different stories.
And he could have been the angel himself.
Very much so. Oh yeah. I mean, the fact that I'm like, wow, that guy. I mean, what just got me also is how there was no traffic all of a sudden. I thought that was, and I didn't catch that until after. I mean, we're talking. My cousin wouldn't let me walk down the street alone because she said there's a lot of fatalities because the way the street, it kind of came down and it wove around, and she's like, it's a 35 mile per hour, but people take it like 90, and we've had a couple of people trying to cross, and there's not enough time, and they just get hit and they get killed. And so that's why she's like, we're going to take the dog, and we're going to go eat burritos and all this kind of stuff. And then just the fact that all of a sudden there's no traffic, and I didn't think about that until after, like, wow. And you know what I think a lot of times too is these experiences come to us, and I think certain things are in place and you don't realize it's happening until after.
Right. Right.
Because otherwise maybe we wouldn't let him go. I could just see that now, spirit saying, Diana, I really have to leave. I can't talk to you anymore. We're done with this. It's been an hour and you asked one prayer and you're already pushing 5, so let's go.
Yeah.
So who's to say?
But who is to say? And it's just so cool to be able to have them standing up for us, and protecting us like they do, because it's needed out there.
Oh, totally.
It's completely needed, and it's so awesome that we have that, knowing that we can be protected when we're not thinking on our straight side.
No, I think it's also reassuring for people who've lost somebody that's very, very important to them. I know it is for me. I look at death very differently than most people, just because I experienced it when I was very young. And with a friend, my first friend, she was 6 years old, and I still think about that. And there was such a no closure on that. So I think there's a part of me that I don't see death the same way as people see it, right?
Right.
But I think that having this belief there's something else out there, I think is really important, because how often when somebody loses somebody, and especially if it's a tragic event, the first thing you go to is, I wonder if they're okay. How do I know?
How do I know? Yeah.
Because, and just by having that comfort, knowing that there's something possible, I think it gives people the option that, when I talk to people about their pets and I say, oh, I'm so sorry you lost your dog or your cat. And our dog and our cat are just as important as people.
Yeah.
They're family. They're just.
And they're out there also with us.
Out there also.
Spirit.
Yeah, the little fur babies. And
our little fur babies.
Fur babies, yep. And I think sometimes when people say, like, just go to the Rainbow Bridge. You'll know it because you'll see all those little faces there. You'll know that that's the right place. And people are just, and it gives them something, because otherwise the loss, we'd never want to feel again.
Right.
I mean, I have a family member that was like, I don't ever want to adopt another dog because I lost a dog and that's too hard. And I'm thinking, how many little animals are being put down right now? And you could take one of them.
Yeah.
And if everybody felt that way, then, geez, we'd never be able, nobody would adopt anymore. Nobody would feel anymore. Right. And just having the hope, having the faith in something, it just gives you something to strive for, and to get out of bed every day, and to, and also I think too, is when you know that you have a loved one that has passed on, and you say, like, I believe they're with my other loved ones, that they're safe, and I almost feel like that gives you a permission to go ahead and move on with your life and to love again, right? Yeah. I mean, you'll never get another mother, you'll never get another father. I mean, there's just certain people that are just certain things, right? But it's like, if you had a spouse, you had a friend or something, and you think, like, okay, they've passed on and they're in a better place.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, but I'm still here. And you have to live your life. You can't just stop living, and people unfortunately do. Yeah. And you have to keep going. And it's like, I think, knowing that, okay, they're safe, and then they would want that for you. Yeah. Time to go on.
Yeah. It's like with my mom when she passed in February. I haven't really cried. And I think a lot of people are looking at me like, you're weird. How come you're not crying? Because your mom passed. You should be crying. But I haven't. But I also know that my mom is with me all the time. I also know that she has been talking with me. And I also know that she's in a much better place. Sometimes I get a little jealous of people that pass because it's like the places they're at. I mean, how exciting is that?
Travel anywhere you want.
Travel.
Fly around.
Yeah, and you get to meet up with all these past relatives and everything.
No
and
bills
it's
to
like
pay.
no bills to pay.
Yeah.
No work to really do. But the work you do is so much fun and rewarding. Yeah. And, in my mom's case, I mean, when she was sick, it's like, how can you not be happy for her? And all I can tell him is it's more of a blessing than not. And I'm just so excited for her. But I'm sure people look at me like, you're weird.
But here's the thing. Yeah, but even if they did, there's 7 stages of grief. And I apologize. I have to have them in front of me because I don't remember all of them. But the point of that is that there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
Mm-hmm. That's
right.
And
there's nobody's place to tell you how. And there's nobody's place to tell you how long in this stage. I mean, there's some people. I remember I was supposed to play a funeral one day for a man that had passed. And I was getting ready. It was a morning funeral. And I got a call from the person that organizes that I was performing with. And she says, yeah, the funeral's been canceled. I was like, how do you cancel a funeral?
Right.
Right. And I said, what? And she goes, well, the wife just died. She died the day of the funeral. Yeah. And she says, they're trying to figure that out. She goes, right now the kids are really in a state of shock because they found her. She was getting ready. And they said she literally just passed within the hour. And I mean, it was, love. And then, there's some people who, like, I also played another funeral for somebody, a man who had taken his life. And all I heard were the people just bashing him, how could you do this to us? Da, 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 da. And after the funeral, I remember I walked up just in silence in my mind and I just looked at him, and as he's laying there, and I said, I get it. And I don't hold anything on you because all I heard was me, 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 and what you can do for me. We need you, we need you. And I'm thinking to myself, not once did any of these people, and I understand their grief. I get that. Mm-hmm. But he was grieving the whole time he was alive, is what it sounded like to me, right? And it's, we have to support and love each other. So there's different stages, and I think about that family. I think about, like, okay, what stages, who knows where they are in their stages of grief, right? Right. And there's no, like, you need to be here. There's nothing wrong if you don't cry. Mm-hmm. You don't cry. Now, someday you may. Yeah. There may be something so funny to the point where you just start bawling and you go, oh, Mom would love this. Or, right. Like I have a cat that I loved dearly. This cat and I were so close. I mean, she used to bring her babies up to my room when we were a teenager when I was growing up. And Kiwi was her name. She's a sweet little thing. And she used to try to bring her babies up. And I found this out after that when I was reading something a veterinarian had posted about animal behavior, like what this means when they do this and that. And they're like, yeah, well, sometimes animals, when they trust somebody and they need a break. And I'm like, yeah, this is a mother of 5. She probably needed a break. She trusted me enough that she was trying to bring all of her kids and have me watch them. Yeah. Right. And when she passed, I spent a lot of time with her, and I didn't cry when she passed either. In fact, I was just like, okay, but it didn't mean I didn't miss her. Right. But I said everything I needed to say. There was nothing to, and it doesn't mean if you do cry that you missed anything either. Right. It just doesn't matter. It's different. I mean, it's different for everybody. Yeah. It's like I'm following this trial for this murdered therapist. I didn't even know her. So many similarities. She's one of the reasons I was so inspired by her years ago that I decided to actually pursue therapy. And during the trial, when I heard about what had really happened, I started to tear up. And I'd never, this is 3 years because of COVID, they had to postpone this trial. 3 years. And I'd heard numerous stories and I'd watched the podcast and catching up, and I was just like, oh, I hope to put this guy away. He needs, this is serious. You can't have somebody like this out there hurting other people. And then there were details of the trial, and it was finally over. I just remember watching, and realizing, wow, okay, now we just have to wait till sentencing in December. And they're talking about this case changing a lot of laws, too, about stalkers. So I'm going to continue to follow this. But I got really emotional, and that surprised me a lot. And I'm still trying to process, what am I upset about? Is it just what happened? Is it the loss? Is it something else? Or maybe it could be a combination of who knows what.
Yeah, and it could be because you are such an empath that you are bringing on that person's feelings,
Yeah.
and that could be what you're feeling.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just putting that blockage up so that you don't bring in other people's feelings and grief and those kinds of things.
Yeah. And it's just, I've had other passings in my life. I've had some people, I can't explain this. I've had some people that I've loved and I've just been like shock. I've had some people that I have grieved for ages after. I mean, my friend that had passed when we were 6 years old, I to this day still haven't grieved. But there also, and I have to look in within myself, and I encourage other people to do the same thing. I also felt like there was no closure. I mean, I still remember her on a Friday. I still remember where she was, and see you Monday. And then she had died that Sunday, I think it was the day before. And then I remember just being so little and going in there and seeing that little empty seat. Brief conversation about that in class. And then it was like, okay, move on. And that's what they did back then. When you had grief, they didn't understand. They didn't have trauma counselors. They didn't have people you could talk to and stuff like that. It was like kind of like, okay, yeah, I know you lost your entire world. Okay, turn to chapter 3. We're going to talk about the history of the, and you're supposed to just go, okay, And I wonder why people, in our age bracket have problems. So.
Well, the cool thing about having these gifts and everything is that when my uncle passed, he was a smoker. And I have smelt him in my house a couple times.
Oh.
A whiff of smoke going through. So I know he's around.
Oh, yeah.
I know he's protecting me and being here with me. So, I mean, things like that, you do have. I mean, they do survive in a different world.
Oh, yeah.
So you never lose your family. They're always with you. And it's not like, you're raised with that, you're always raised, well, they're always going to be with you. And it's like, but you don't think about
when they're not.
Well, you don't think about the spiritual side of it. You just think, oh, they're always with you. But how deep do you think about it until you get into the spiritual world like this? And then you realize really where they are. They are always with you in spirit. And until you get that, it's kind of hard for some people to understand that they never die.
No, I believe
they
that.
just go on to a different life. They go to a different state. It's like someone moving from California to Kansas.
Exactly.
It's just they're just moving states. Of mind.
When I was just a very tiny little baby when my great grandmother on my mom's side had passed. Grandma Rinaldi, they called her. Now here's the funny thing. I mean, they all came from Italy, but it turns out they're all Scottish. I know, that's the funny thing. The ancestry DNA, so that'll just mess up everything. So they described when she was passing, all of them described the moment when they had her in the room, all those aunts, her daughters were around, and they had a family, I think, of like 15. They lost a lot of children. They had a couple that died. My grandmother had scarlet fever, and they had, the typical things that they had. And they talked about how right before she passed, they were all in the living room, and she was just sitting in her little chair, leaning back, and she was sewing, and she put the needlework down on her lap, and they said she was looking around and all around and like in awe, like wow, she's gonna touch stuff, and then she just went back and just passed away. Like that. So she saw something. And my grandmother said that a couple days before my grandfather died, he died of an aneurysm, and she said they were watching TV and he was asleep in the chair, and he always slept with his mouth hanging down. Like that, like Darth Vader. He actually sounded like that, And she says it was the weirdest thing. She goes, the cat was going crazy because the cat knew that there was something wrong. The cat kept trying to paw at her. And she says, I couldn't get the cat to leave us alone for 3 days. And she goes, I didn't know what it meant. And the cat and my grandfather were like very close. The cat slept.
Okay.
I would always tell my grandfather, pull the cover up. I mean, they were together all the time. And my grandma said that it was like just days. I mean, maybe a couple days before he woke up out of a dream and said, "Mama, Mama Rinaldi, Mama Rinaldi, why are you here?" Kind of thing, right? And they were always been really close.
Okay.
And she said that when he came out of his dream, or when he woke up, he's like, I saw your mama. I saw Mama. She's here, and she's looking around, and she's like, "Honey, you're in the living room. Everything's fine." And she says, then he died very suddenly. He had an aneurysm in his back, and the cat just disappeared. The cat took off, and nobody could find the cat for a couple of days. I think it was too traumatizing for him. They found him in the cellar, hiding way up on the shelf. He was scared, and because he knew what happened, he knew he passed.
Yeah.
And my grandma says, I think that my mom was coming to get him.
Yeah.
She goes, because he was really freaked by that. He was just like, why are you here, kind of thing. And they talked about how she was always the one to try to help people find their way, and they loved her. And so it was just, little stories like that. And I sensed with family members when they tell those stories, there was grief, but I didn't see any like major stages, and there wasn't really a lot of crying.
Yeah.
So it's all different.
It's all different. Yeah. I remember when my father-in-law passed. He was in hospice, and he's laying there, and we were all together. All of the kids were there and everything, and everybody was talking, and I looked over at my father-in-law, and I see that he's looking up. He's laying down, but you can see he's looking up, and he just gets this great big smile on his face.
Oh.
And then he came back down. The smile went away, and he kind of went back to where he was. And a little bit later, we all left, and we came home. It was like a 30-minute drive or so from the hospital to where we lived. And as soon as we got in the door, we just got in the door, closed the door, and my husband's brother calls and says, "You better get back down here."
Oh.
So we had to go back down there, and by the time we got back down there, he had passed. But he saw them. He saw family, and he saw everybody.
See, that's amazing. My sister had a cat, Shotzi. I still remember when my coworker came in. This was years ago, and she was all upset. And I'm like, "What's the matter?" She's like, "The cat got out last night, and she's in heat." She goes, "My husband's a wreck."
Oh no.
And I'm like, "Oh, you don't think?" And she says, "Oh yeah." She says, there's a deadbeat neighborhood cat. He's already impregnated 3 on this street. Everybody's dealing with this problem." And she says, "And we caught them together, and he took off. Nobody can catch him. We've been trying to catch him." And she says, anyway, she goes, "My cat was seen with him." I was like, "Oh, and so sure enough,
don't tell mom and dad."
So sure enough, she says, a week later, she comes in, and she's like, "Kittens." She goes, "There's 6 of them in there." And I was like, "Can they tell that soon?" And apparently they can. I'm not sure how. Maybe they got the date wrong or something. But she says, "Yep, cat's pregnant. Cat's pregnant." And I said, or maybe it was 2 weeks. I don't know. But I know it was a short amount of time they were able to tell. And I just remember I said, "Well, you know what? Yeah." She goes, "Well, I'm looking for homes." And she says, "Well, we'll start arranging that." And it was funny because my sister had told me how, she says, I want to get a little kitten. And when I told her about this, she's like, this is it. This is it.
This is my kitten.
Yeah, it's my kitten. So I told my friend, I said, "Yeah, we're going to reserve one." So I just remember waiting. The 9 weeks was like, forever to get this, So it was after Christmas. The kittens were born, I think, November.
Okay.
Around Thanksgiving, I think. And then we had to go back in January. So it was like a late Christmas present for her. And I still remember she was all excited. I drove her up there and I said, "My Christmas present to you, it's a free kitten. She's not going to charge us, but I'll drive you up there. I'll pay for the gas. I'll get you there. You pick out the cat you want, Long story short, that cat had just passed recently. And I got a call, and she says, she left a message, and she said, "I just want you to know Miss Shotzi." And that's Shotzi was her name. She said, "Miss Shotzi is now, on her last legs, and we don't think she's going to make it through the night." And so I said, "Oh, let me call her back right away." So I call back. And I'm like, "Hi, how you doing?" And she's like, "We're just hanging out here." She goes, "You want to say hi to Shotzi?" I said, "Yeah, put her on the phone." And I said, Shotzi, it's me. And I told a little story. I said, I remember the day we brought you home. You fell asleep in my hand. You were so little. And I remember when
Yeah.
we picked you out and you were crying because we put you in the carrier and you were crying and your mom came up and gave you a big lick on the head and then turned her back. Like she knew it was time for you to go. And they had a Pekingese dog that was just a wreck. The dog was just like, freaking out, like, just and stuff. And I told her the whole story and I said, I just want you to know that you're a good girl and I love you. And all of a sudden, my sister starts crying and goes, oh my God. She goes, I gotta go. She goes, and she said, Shotzi died right after that. After that was said. And we talked after, and she says, I think it was kind of a bookend. She goes, you were there before she was born and knew she was coming. And she goes, and she needed closure from you before she could go. And I was just like, well, that's cool. I'm a book thing. Bookend the beginning of somebody's life. That's just cool. I had a cat that was like that, another cat that was like that too. And it's just, what it tells me is just the dimension of life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a life that I think she lived to be 18, 19 years old.
That's a long life.
Yeah. But
a long life.
When you think about for us, that's not a long life for a human being. But for
No.
a cat, that's an entire birth, all the way to, being a baby, teenage years, psychotic cat years, because they have that thing we have there, adulthood, and then elderly stage, and then just, it's like that. And that was all in the lifespan of 18 years. And it's like, that's out. But you look at us, and it's just, I think about when I was mentioning earlier about my godparents, they were the first marriage for each at 70. And they were married, I forget, I think about 10 or 11 years. But I think about how my age now, and I think about all the years experience they had before I was born. Mm-hmm. And now here I am at that age going there, and I still haven't caught up to them.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just amazing. It's just.
But we've learned so much, and even though, we have our spirit guides to help us learn everything. We have our angels, and we have all of our support system upstairs to help us through everything. And it's amazing what they give us and what they teach us and all of that. It's just so cool. Yeah, and there's times when I'm looking up in the sky going, okay, is this a joke? Like when they hand me something I really don't want to do, I'm like, are you kidding me? And I look up like, is this funny to you? Because it's not funny down here. It could be, like I've been in the same job for a long time, and I've got about a year, and I tell myself, okay, you can get through this. And there's some mornings where I'm looking at the alarm going off, and I'm like, no, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding. This cannot be right. This cannot be right. Mm-hmm. Or I wake up, it's only Tuesday. Seriously? Yeah, it feels like Friday. It feels like Friday. Or it's like Friday night, it's like, oh, like here I am going, wow, my most exciting thing is, I get to sleep in an extra hour. Wow, that is so sad. Because I remember being 15, it's like, okay, here's all the things we're going to do over the weekend, And now I think I'm at that stage where an extra hour of sleep is probably the most exciting thing of my week. So sad. But there's times I'm like, are the spirit guides joking with me? And I hear laughter in my head. Yeah. So I found out a lot about you today. We had went to my friend that's a psychic, Shane. And you really have a lot that you can do. You read my friend. He had someone come through for him. Mm-hmm. And you read that. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of doubt in my head, though. I want to encourage anybody that's listening is, definitely pursue that and go with your feeling, because it's there for a reason. It's right? There for a reason. Because you have to take it in stages. Mm-hmm. There's what I'm learning a lot right now is developing resiliency. And so it can actually be for somebody to push too hard or go against with what they feel. Now, there's within reason. I'm not saying, there's some things you have to do. If you want to stay healthy, you have to exercise, you have to eat right. There's some things you have to do, right? You got to go to work every morning, that kind of thing. But with certain stages in life, it's important to progress at your pace. And if you feel like it just doesn't feel right, don't push it, because it can be harmful. It's kind of like, and as I was saying just a moment ago with resilience,
a lot of times when things are done for people, as we're seeing in some parts of the generations that are coming now, things are done, they don't have certain skills, and you need those skills.
Yeah.
There's going to be, I think that's why life is the way it is. I think that's why death happens. I learned it, unfortunately, my very first experience was with a little friend. Most people I know, their very first experience is usually with a little animal. And it doesn't mean that it's better. It doesn't mean that it's easier. It's just, it gives you exposure to that. And I've seen some people who've never lost anybody until they were like 20 or 30 years old. Believe it or not, anybody that they were really close to. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And how do you get through it?
How do you get through it? Yeah. And that is hard. That is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you have this kind of knowledge and everything of the afterlife, and the light is just, you have a whole different view.
Oh,
it's
totally.
Just a whole different view.
Totally. I had an experience. I'll share this really quick, just for anybody who needs a good laugh, because this is a true dream. I had, and I don't remember exactly when this was, but do you remember when there was some kind of scare in Hawaii about some kind of nuclear thing? Do you remember?
Yes, just a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So I actually had a dream about I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks before that happened. True story. I'm not making this up. This is absolutely true. But I had this dream, and I get a lot of messages in my dreams, and I don't always take them literally. But this one was eye-opening. It was kind of funny too. It made me laugh. It still makes me laugh to this day. And I don't know if you know who Medea is. Tyler Perry, Medea. Some of your listeners might know. Medea is a great character. You gotta watch. But I had this dream that I was in some kind of, like, it felt like a military building. I just remember just going in this mill, I'm running down the halls, and I'm hearing that there's going to be a nuclear bombing in Hawaii. It was a dream. And all I kept thinking was millions of people could die. This could damage life I'm like, all I kept thinking about was I got to help. I got to do what I got to do. I got to tell somebody. I mean, I'm running down these halls, and there's like all these doors. It's like one of those cold kind of things, with the shiny floor, and you see like everything's painted one color kind of thing, and you see the doors and stuff like that. And I was running down there, and I come across this door, and I open it up, and there's this very tall, beautiful black woman that looked like Medea. And Medea, the character of Medea, is played by Tyler Perry, and Medea was created out of his grandmother, his mother, and all the black women in his community. Big lady that's always in trouble and says genius things and just really funny. It's a comedy, right? Okay. And I see this very tall black woman in a white pantsuit directing this choir of all these African American men playing all these instruments. They all look beautiful, and they're in their tuxedos and stuff. And it says God's choir, and those lights that you see like in the bars. Those lights, right? It says God's choir. And I just remember going there, and I just, which I believe is God. This black woman comes over and says, "Honey, what's the matter?" And I said, "There's gonna be bombing in Hawaii." And I swear, this beautiful woman looks at me and says, "It's okay. I've got it. It's gonna be fine. You need to go.
That's very cool.
You've got it." And I'm like, "Okay, so everything's fine." And so she says, "No, I've got it. Are you okay?" And I remember hearing this, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." And I just felt this peace, just this beauty. And I just felt like, no, everything's fine. And so I just was like, okay, and the door closes, and then I'm walking down the hall, and then I don't remember much after that, but I wake up. And then that's it. And I thought, wow, God is a tall 6-foot black woman with a white pantsuit. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. And I told a couple of my friends, and they just said, a couple of African American friends are like, "Oh, you're finally figuring that out, right?" I said, yeah. I said it was a great dream. And then when that scare of that nuclear thing happened, I just remember going,
yeah,
no,
she's got this.
Yeah, and
it's all under control.
Exactly. It was just kind of fun.
It's all under control.
Yeah, that happens, and whether that was related or not, but it felt like it was.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought of. Like, okay, I remember. No, everything's going to be fine. And then, as far as I know, everything worked out. But,
yeah. I haven't heard. Excuse me, I haven't heard too much about that.
No details that I
know.
No
real details from that I remember hearing.
Yeah, but I remember what that building looked like.
Oh yeah.
It was so strange. It's like some dreams. I don't know. Do you ever get that? Do you ever get messages in your dreams?
I don't know if I've really gotten messages through dreams, but I've had some weird dreams that like 2 dreams I've had. And I was with my family, And it was at the same place, same location, but different things happened. Like I was there one time, it was from, I believe that was like my husband's work retreat type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there for him, and then we did some activities and stuff around and all. And then a couple nights later, I had another dream in the same location, but it turned into like a family reunion kind of thing. So I'm still kind of piecing that one together, what that was about. But I feel like there's something with it. There was something in the message of being in the same place for two different reasons. Either I was visiting the future. I don't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really weird. It was really pretty. It was mountainy scene, like in the background here.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just two visits to the same place.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm still kind of figuring that one out.
I have a John Denver dream that I'm still trying to figure out.
Really?
Yeah. I remember I was up in Aspen a lot, and I remember when he passed, and my sister and my dad built airplanes, and they were talking about, like, I think his passing had to do with the fact that he wasn't able to flip the fuel. You can have two different fuel tanks, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure if that's right, but I thought they said that he ran out of fuel and he wasn't able to flip the tank to take over to the, so he so it's like
down that.
Yeah, and that's it was really unfortunate because I was a big fan of his, and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But I had this dream where I'm just walking in the mountains in Aspen, and I hear Rocky Mountain High. I was like, "Ooh, I love that song." Let's find out who that is, and it's John Denver, and he's got this like bowl haircut, and I remember him from the '70s and his haircut and stuff like that, and singing Rocky Mountain High. And in my dream, he looks up at me and he goes, like shocked to see me. And I go, "I love you. You're fabulous." And in the dream, he says to me, You need to go. You're not supposed to be here." And I'm like, seriously, how rude. You're even rude. Like, aren't celebrities supposed to be nice to their fans, especially in your dream life? I mean, come on.
So this happened after he passed?
After
this
he
dream?
passed. Yeah.
So you went and visited him.
That's what it's
in heaven.
In heaven, because he was singing, and I remember he talked about loving the mountains, but I can still, because here's the thing, to me,
that's so cool.
There's like, some people talk about, and I'm not sure I really understand astral travel, to be quite honest with you, but I've had dreams where they're just visions, and I've had dreams where I've actually physically been there. It's a feel like I'm actually there. This felt like I was there. I just remember the feeling of walking. I was almost floating along and following the music, and then I see him. And he was young. He was not the current age that when he passed. He was younger, and he was just singing and stuff. And it was a beautiful day. I still remember. And I've had dreams also where I'm in this most beautiful blue sky, and I see things. It's just very quaint, beautiful colors, things like that. And that's how this was. It was just one of those, just like a beautiful. If you can imagine, just a beautiful summer afternoon way up in the mountains. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, look at my picture.
Where the sun, where the sun just dances a certain way. Or even this time of year when you have like the transition where the air is cooler, but the sun just has that gentle glow. Right? And only the aspens and only the pine trees can pick it up like that, right?
Right.
And there's something so beautiful. And it was a little bit brighter than this picture here. But he's out there singing that, and just the fact that you need to go. And I was like, seriously, what is this? He's like, first I see God in Hawaii, and I'm supposed to leave there. Okay, everything's fine. And then it's like John Denver tells me I have to go. I'm like, this is my dream. Don't I have a say so whether I get to stay in this here? But I just remember how real that felt, and I've had that happen in a few dreams, and where they've all told me you're not supposed to be here. It's not your time yet. My mom has had that too. We've both had the dream with the train where you see a loved one on there, and the loved one says, I'll see you, but you can't come with me. We both had that happen. And
my sister had a dream similar to that. Yeah. And I had a dream of a friend from high school. He had passed shortly after high school. And he was in a wheelchair, and he wasn't supposed to be able to walk at all. And we were pretty good friends. He always tried to run me over, and I threatened to shut his battery off so he couldn't move his wheelchair. So we always had such a some jokes and everything about that. But I had this dream that I was in this white room. Everything was white.
Mhm.
And he sat up or stood up and started walking towards me.
Oh.
And I knew he was walking, but I didn't know how or what. But for many, many years, I wondered if he was walking. And I think it's because of that dream. And I wandered and wandered and wandered. And just a couple years ago, I found out that he had passed about the time I had that dream.
Much time, yeah. Yeah,
So
isn't that amazing?
That was so cool that he came back, and I was like, oh, thank you. And, now 10, 15 years later, yeah. And I actually got a hold of his parents and, kind of talked to him about the dream and, to let him know that he's good and he's walking and he's happy.
See, that's so special.
Yeah.
I had a dream. I interviewed a World War II veteran. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. And it's a long story about that, but, a lot of things family didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I became very close after with the family. When they told me, they said, we had strained relations. Now we understand where he's coming from. Now we get it. We didn't know all this happened. They didn't know that he never received the medals he was entitled to. There's a lot of racial issues going on there.
Mm.
And so, his family reported that, and they actually, she said, I remember the sister told me, she goes, when I called, I don't know who she was, she called in Washington, and they said, well, what you can do is go to the fabric store and make them for him.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, wait, what? These are things he's entitled to,
Yeah.
Well, apparently word got around to the right, and they had a big parade for him. They had a big,
Nice.
And so, and then everyone, he passed, and I didn't cry. When you're talking about crying, I didn't cry for him, right? And I mean, he shared his deepest, darkest secrets about what really happened with all of us. And I consider that a great gift, that we were able to talk about that. And we got that on film and everything. So now for his family and everything else. But I had a dream about him. And I had a dream about him, gosh, this is probably about a year ago. And I saw him, and he was in a living room.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a woman with kind of reddish hair. He was Hispanic, and his family Hispanic, and this woman had like kind of dark, I could see her hands. I was behind her in a chair. It's almost like I was him. I could see him. And then I was like behind him, and I could see, and she had her hands, I could see that she was, darker skin. And I'm like, okay, that's a relative. And I remember processing this in my dream. And he was there, and she was crying, and she was weeping, and wondering, do you see me? I kept hearing this, do you see me? Do you know who I am? Do you see me? Do you see me? And in the dream, I was like, oh, hi, Joe. Hi. And he says, tell her I see her. And that was the dream.
Oh.
Well, I forgot to mention that, to my friend. I was supposed to tell him. Jeez, let me see. Look at this. I get a dream message from the afterlife, and I don't even deliver it on time. But I finally got around to doing that, and I contacted my friend, and I said, hey, because I had a feeling like she was still. I think this is his daughter, my friend's mom.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I contacted her on Facebook, and I said, hey, I just to let you know, I had a dream about your grandfather. And he was in the old living room. Your mom was in that chair. And he says, yes, he sees her. I don't know if that means anything to you. So she says, oh, I don't know. I'll get back to you. And then later in the day, the mom's like, thank you, Diana. That's what I needed to know.
Oh.
And I went, oh, yeah. Because I thought
it was
so good to see him again. I mean, the story for him was just, he was basically 17 years old and thrown in the front lines of the Battle of the Bulge, is what he said. And he said that happened a lot with people that are a different ethnicity, and handed a gun, just like, good luck. And not realizing, though, he actually had the skills to use it. And he didn't know he had that. And that's what actually promoted him through. But just all the injustices and stuff that happened after. And apparently it all worked itself out. But I think that just it was so touching to find out that she was in the room, and she said, she goes, there was one night when I was just really sad, missing him. And I think it was around Christmas time, and she says, I just want to know, Dad, can you see me? And I was like, wow, like, your videographer says yes. He can see her. And I just forgot to tell you. Going through months and months of that. But yeah.
Well, I think our time is pretty much up here, and I want to thank you so much for being on the show. And sorry, audience, for this in and out of kind of pictory thing. I think we were having fun with it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thank you so much for being on the show, and
Thanks for having
I
me.
hope we can get together again and talk some more. There's so much fun.
Well, we start doing
So much
meditation. We'll see what
yes.
happens. We'll have more content.
Yeah.
You know, more
content. Yep. That'll be so much fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show, and we will talk with you later. All right. Bye. Yeah.